Why was she lying in the snow while the helicopter lifted away? Snow exploded around them in white bursts. Each tracer round carved red lines through the darkness, lighting the frozen ground for half a heartbeat before vanishing. The sound was everything: rotors beating the air, wind tearing at loose straps and metal, gunfire cracking through the cold. It was the kind of chaos that makes your chest tight, that forces your breath shallow whether you want it to or not. A SEAL element was collapsing toward extraction, boots slipping on ice, breaths coming sharp and uneven. Radio traffic cutting through the noise, voices overlapping, urgency bleeding through every transmission. Someone shouted a call sign, then again louder this time, edged with something that sounded like panic. Alina Mercer lay prone in the snow, rifle locked tight into her shoulder, cheek pressed against cold metal. Her breathing stayed slow, deliberate, as if the chaos around her belonged to someone else's world. She did not need the radio to tell her what was happening. She could read it in the angle of the helicopter, the shortening hover, the way urgency had replaced precision in every movement. She felt no anger, no surprise, only focus tightening into something sharp and clean. The helicopter lifted early. The sound pulled away, fatting into the storm, leaving behind a silence that felt violent in its own way. Snow began to settle where her team had been standing seconds before. Inside the aircraft, no one spoke. Helmets faced forward, eyes dropped. The urgency was gone now, replaced by something much heavier, something that sits in your gut and does not leave. Who was Alina Mercer, and why did they leave her behind? She was in her late 30s, a Navy SEAL sniper sergeant with more years in uniform than most people around her realized. Her service record was long, dense, and quiet, the kind that filled folders but rarely made its way into stories told over drinks or around briefing tables. She did not advertise it. She did not need to. Physically, she blended in easily. Average height, lean build, movements economical to the point of being forgettable. She carried herself without stiffness or swagger, as if nothing about her required explanation. In a room full of louder personalities, she was often overlooked simply because she did not demand space. Within the team, she was reliable in ways that were hard to measure. She showed up early. She stayed late. She listened more than she spoke. When she did speak, her voice was calm, even stripped of excess. In briefings, she never competed for attention. She asked questions only when something mattered. That restraint was often mistaken for passivity. She was not the loudest in the room. She did not interrupt. She did not push her opinions unless the situation demanded it. In a culture that prized confidence and speed, her composure sometimes registered as distance. More than once, new members of the team assumed she was support rather than strike, logistics rather than lead. No one said it outright, but the assumptions showed in small ways. When positions were assigned, she was rarely the first name called. When aggressive roles were discussed, eyes drifted past her without intent. It was not malice. It was momentum, the unspoken gravity of expectation. There were jokes too, light ones, careful ones. Someone once laughed that she treated every approach like it was a textbook example. Another said she was too careful for this rotation, too measured for a place that demanded speed. The comments were framed as teasing, but they landed with weight. Alina never responded. She smiled once briefly and returned to checking her gear. Her discipline lived in details others missed. Before every mission, she checked her rifle twice. Not because she distrusted herself, but because repetition calmed the mind. Magazine seated, bolt smooth, scope clean, safety tested. Then again slower, fingers moving in the same order every time. Inside her plate carrier, pressed flat against her chest, was a folded Christmas card. The paper was worn soft at the edges, creased from being handled too often. She had received it days earlier and read it once in silence. She did not reread it, knowing it was there was enough. In the field, Alina noticed things before others did. A light that flicked off too late, footprints that did not match the pattern of local movement, the way a breeze carried sound from one direction but not another. She rarely announced these observations loudly. She shared them when timing mattered. Often, timing did not matter to anyone but her. The team moved fast. They trusted speed and pressure. They trusted technology and tight schedules. Alina trusted spacing, angles, and the way a place felt when it was about to turn against you. The difference between those instincts widened as the deployment wore on. She had learned patience early in her career, long before it was fashionable. She had learned what happened when confidence outran caution, when momentum replaced judgment. Those lessons stayed with her, etched deeper than rank or qualification. There were moments when her calm unsettled people, when incoming fire did not change her breathing, when near misses earned no reaction beyond a slight shift in position. Someone once asked her how she stayed so composed. Alina shrugged and said she paid attention. As Christmas approached, fatigue settled over the team like a low fog. Missions stacked closer together. Sleep came in fragments. Command wanted results before weather closed the window completely. Forecasts grew worse, but timelines stayed fixed. The mission briefing took place in a cramped room with maps taped to the walls and condensation on the windows. Voices overlapped as routes were discussed and contingencies trimmed down. Extraction windows were narrow. Risk was acknowledged, then compressed into acceptable margins. Alina studied the map quietly, tracing distances in her head. She noticed how the terrain funneled movement toward open ground. She noted how weather would limit visibility and sound. She waited until a pause opened, then spoke. Her suggestion was simple: a minor adjustment, a different overwatch position. It would slow the timeline slightly but reduce exposure during extraction. The response came quickly, wrapped in urgency. They did not have time. The window was already tight. Someone laughed lightly and said they could not afford scenic routes tonight. The room moved on. Alina leaned back in her chair, accepting the decision without protest. She had done her part. She would adapt as she always did. That was the discipline she trusted. As the briefing ended, chairs scraped and voices rose, shifting toward action. Alina folded the Christmas card once more and slid it back into place. Around her, energy spiked, driven by urgency and the false comfort of motion. Outside, the air was sharp with cold. The sky hung low and heavy, promising snow. Alina paused for a moment, eyes lifting toward the dark, reading the wind the way she always did. Something about the night felt compressed, tight, like it was waiting. The call came to gear up. The mission would move fast. The margin for error would be thin. And Alina Mercer, once again, would not be the loudest voice when it mattered. What happens when a perfect plan meets an imperfect night? They stepped off the wire with a kind of confidence that comes from repetition. The route had been walked in rehearsal, the timing measured down to minutes, the words for contingencies already sitting in everyone's mouth. At first, it felt like another mission stacked into a long week, another movement through cold air and hard ground, another night where discipline did the thinking. Alina moved with the team, but not with their mood. She watched the lines that did not show up on maps. Corners where sound behaved differently. Roof edges where snow did not settle the same. The way the wind pushed against one wall but left another oddly still. The first crack in the plan did not look like danger. It looked like delay. A gust hit hard enough to force the point man to brace. Then another. The wind was picking up faster than forecast predicted. Snow began to fall in earnest, thick and immediate, cutting visibility down to meters instead of blocks. Radio chatter increased. Adjustments were made on the move. The timeline compressed. What had been careful became rushed. What had been measured became reactive. Alina felt the shift before anyone said it out loud. The way movements tightened. The way voices carried a new edge. She scanned rooftops and alleys with the same calm rhythm, but her mind was tracking something else now. Exit routes, fallback positions, the distance between where they were and where they needed to be. Then contact, not overwhelming. Not immediate chaos, just enough to force a decision. Muzzle flashes from a high position, rounds snapping overhead. The team pressed forward, returning fire, maintaining momentum because stopping meant losing the initiative. Alina took position on a roofline, settling into her scope, finding targets through the snow. Her shots were methodical, spaced, each one placed with intention. She was not trying to win the fight. She was trying to shape it, buy time, create space. The radio crackled. Extraction inbound. Time to collapse. The team began to pull back in pairs, covering each other through the snow. Alina shifted positions, moving to a better angle, one that covered the withdrawal route more completely. She called it in, acknowledged, but the acknowledgement was brief, distracted. The helicopter was fighting the weather. The pilot's voice was tight, professional, but strained. Wind gusts were worse than expected. The bird was struggling to hold steady. The team moved faster now, discipline fraying at the edges. They reached the extraction point and spread out, forming a perimeter in the blowing snow. Alina took the farthest position, the one with the widest field of view. She could see the whole area. She could see what was coming, and she could see that they were not clear yet. Movement on the ridge. Shadows shifting through the white. Hostiles repositioning, trying to close the distance before the helicopter could land. She called it in, painted the threat, gave distances and directions. The response was immediate but not what she expected. They were loading, they had to go. The window was closing. Alina's voice stayed calm. She repeated the information, added detail, emphasized the risk. The helicopter was already descending, rotors screaming, snow exploding outward in a white wave. The team was moving toward it, heads down, fighting the wind. Someone shouted her call sign. Once. Then again. She heard it through the static, through the noise, through everything, but she did not move. She stayed in position, rifle steady, eyes on the ridge, because someone had to. Someone had to hold the line long enough for the others to get clear. Someone had to make sure the helicopter did not take fire while it was most vulnerable. She made the choice in a heartbeat, not because she was brave, not because she wanted recognition, but because it was the right call. The only call. The helicopter lifted. The sound pulled away, and Alina Mercer was alone. How long can one person hold against the dark? Silence settled over the valley like a weight, the kind of silence that makes you aware of your own heartbeat, your own breath, the smallest sound of fabric shifting against gear. Alina did not panic, she did not freeze, she adjusted. Her mind moved through the situation with the same calm precision she brought to everything else. She was alone, extraction had left. The enemy was closing, weather was worsening. These were facts. She could not change them, she could only respond to them. She shifted her position slightly, moving to harder cover, a place where the angles worked better. She checked her ammunition. 3 magazines left. Not much, but enough if she was smart. She scanned the ridge again, patient, looking for movement, for heat signatures, for anything that told her where the threat was coming from. The first probe came 10 minutes later. A small element moving down from the high ground, testing the valley, looking for targets. Alina let them come closer. Patience. Discipline. When the shot mattered, she took it. Clean, precise. The element scattered, pulling back into cover. She did not chase them with fire. She conserved ammunition. She watched. Another 20 minutes passed. The cold was settling into her bones now, the kind of cold that makes your fingers stiff, that slows your reactions if you let it. Alina did not let it. She flexed her hands inside her gloves, controlled her breathing, stayed present. The second probe was more aggressive. They had learned from the first. They moved with more caution, used better cover. Alina adjusted her position again, giving herself a different angle. She took 2 shots this time. Both hit. The enemy pulled back again, but they were learning her patterns now. They were starting to understand that she was alone. She knew what they were thinking. One shooter, limited ammunition, surrounded, time was on their side. All they had to do was wait, pressure her, force her to make mistakes. Alina did not make mistakes. She rationed her shots. She moved between positions. She created the illusion of more than one sniper, more than one threat. She played the angles like a chess game, always thinking 3 moves ahead. Hours passed. The snow kept falling. The cold kept pressing. Her body started to protest, muscles cramping, joints aching, but she pushed through it. Pain was information. She acknowledged it and kept working. The radio on her chest was silent. No rescue was coming. Not yet, maybe not at all. She did not think about that. She thought about the next shot, the next position, the next decision, because that was all she could control. The third probe came from multiple directions. They were coordinating now, trying to pin her down, trying to overwhelm her position. Alina waited until they committed, until they were exposed, then she moved. She took her shots from a new position entirely, one they had not expected. The surprise bought her another hour, another small victory, but she knew it could not last forever. Ammunition was running low, 2 magazines left, then 1. She had to make every round count now. Every decision had to be perfect. There was no margin for error, no backup, no second chances. She thought about the Christmas card pressed against her chest. She thought about why she carried it, not for luck, not for comfort, but as a reminder of who she was, of what mattered, of the people who believed in her even when others did not see her. That was enough. That had always been enough. Why do some people stand when others would run? The night stretched on. Alina lost track of time. Minutes blurred into hours. The cold became something she carried rather than something she fought. Her focus narrowed to the essentials: breathing, scanning, waiting, shooting when it mattered, moving when it did not. She was not trying to win anymore. She was not even trying to survive. She was simply holding the line. That was the mission. That was all it had ever been. Hold the line so others could get clear. Make sure the helicopter made it out. Make sure the team made it home. Everything else was secondary. Her last magazine was half empty when she heard it, faint at first. A sound that could have been wind, could have been imagination, but it grew, steady, rhythmic, rotors. The helicopter was coming back. Alina did not move. She stayed in position, rifle up, scanning for threats, because this was when mistakes happened. This was when people got careless, when they let relief cloud judgment. She would not make that mistake. The aircraft appeared through the snow, lights dimmed, approach shallow. It was fighting the wind, testing the air, moving carefully. A small element dismounted first, spreading slowly, weapons raised. They expected resistance. They expected the silence to break the wrong way. They did not expect to find her still holding position. Alina remained prone, half buried in snow, gear crusted white. Her rifle tracked the movement of the approaching operators until recognition settled in. Only then did she ease the muzzle down, just enough to signal friendly. No one shouted her name. No one ran. The men approaching slowed instead. One knelt beside her, eyes searching for blood, for injury, for signs that the night had taken something it would not give back. Alina shook her head once. That was all. They helped her to her knees. Her legs protested, stiff and numb, but she steadied herself without leaning longer than necessary. She glanced once toward the ridge, confirming what she already knew. It was quiet, completely quiet. They moved her toward the helicopter without speaking, as if words might fracture something delicate. More operators emerged from cover, helmets turning toward her, eyes holding hers for a moment longer than usual. There was no disbelief in those looks, only understanding. Inside the aircraft, the air felt different than it had hours earlier. The frantic edge was gone, replaced by a heavy stillness. Alina stepped aboard last, pausing only to check her sector one final time before releasing it. The door slid shut, the helicopter lifted. Only then did helmets begin to come off. One by one, gloves pulled free, goggles pushed up, faces appeared, pale with cold and exhaustion, eyes rimmed with something deeper. No one spoke. The rotors filled the silence, and that was enough. The team leader stood across from her in the narrow space. This was the man who had pushed the timeline, the man who had cut off her warnings with urgency and fear. He did not look away now. He removed his helmet slowly and held it against his chest. Then he raised his hand in a quiet salute. It was not sharp. It was not formal. It carried no performance. It was simply honest. Alina looked at him for a moment, then nodded once. She did not return the salute. She did not need to. Her acknowledgement settled the space between them. No one else saluted. They did not have to. Their respect showed in the way shoulders eased, in the way eyes softened, in the way no one felt the need to explain what had happened. Someone offered her water. She took a small sip and passed it back. Someone asked if she was hurt. She shook her head again. That was the extent of her words. As the helicopter climbed away from the valley, the men inside sat quietly. No one replayed the fight. No one filled the air with relief or bravado. They sat with the understanding of how close the night had come to ending differently. Alina leaned back against the bulkhead, closing her eyes for a brief moment, not from relief but from fatigue. The folded Christmas card pressed against her chest as it always had. She did not take it out. She did not need to. When she opened her eyes again, the team leader was still watching her. Their eyes met for a second, and something unspoken passed between them. Then Alina looked away, back to her gear, back to the simple act of breathing. The helicopter carried them through thinning snow, leaving behind a valley that would remember the night in its own quiet way. What changes when respect is finally earned? No cheering followed them home. No speeches were made. The moment did not ask for more. It lived in the silence between people who now understood exactly who had stood between them and the dark. The hours that followed were quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Reports were written without flourish. Timelines were corrected. Maps were marked and folded again. The mission moved from chaos into paperwork, from danger into memory. Without ceremony or raised voices, Alina sat through the after-action review with the same posture she carried through everything else. She answered when asked, kept her responses precise and unemotional, never lingering on moments that others wanted to examine more closely. When questions drifted toward her decisions alone in the valley, she redirected them back to terrain, weather, and timing. Facts mattered. Credit did not. When the room thinned and conversations shifted elsewhere, she gathered her gear quietly. No one stopped her. No one needed to. The attention she avoided was already fatting into something deeper, more permanent. In a corner away from the noise, she removed her plate carrier and reached inside. The Christmas card was still there, edges worn soft from being carried close. She unfolded it once, just enough to see the familiar handwriting, then folded it again with care and slid it back into place. Some things were not meant to be shared. They were meant to be carried. Around her, the team moved differently now. Conversations paused when she passed, not from discomfort but from a new awareness. The assumptions that once floated unnoticed had settled and broken apart. No one needed to say it out loud. They had seen enough. Courage does not announce itself. It does not interrupt. It waits patiently, preparing for the moment when steadiness matters more than recognition. Most acts of valor never arrive with witnesses. They happen in storms and darkness, in the space between decisions, carried out by people who do not ask whether anyone is watching. They are overlooked because they are calm. They are forgotten because they do not demand to be remembered. Alina never corrected the people who underestimated her before that night. She did not rewrite the story afterward. She returned to her role with the same quiet discipline she had always trusted, content to let the outcome stand on its own. The world often remembers heroism through ceremony and noise, but the truth lives elsewhere. It lives with those who shoulder responsibility without asking if it will be seen, who stay when leaving would be easier, who hold the line because someone has to. That is where real courage exists. Courage does not demand to be seen. It only asks to be steady when it matters. Christmas looks different for those who serve. It is not marked by warmth or celebration, but by long hours, cold ground, and decisions that do not pause for the calendar. While families gather and lights glow in quiet neighborhoods, there are service members standing watch, carrying responsibility in silence, asking for nothing in return. This story is not only about one woman, one night, or one mission. It is about the many who shoulder the weight alone, who stay steady when conditions collapse, who measure success not by recognition but by who makes it home. If this story stayed with you, take a moment to remember those who serve through the holidays, unseen and uncelebrated, holding lines the rest of us never have to see. Sometimes dignity does not speak, it simply acts.